Hey everybody, my name is Jonathan Core, and in today's marketing talk, I have the pleasure of speaking to one of the partners for the Statement Group, which uses proprietary data to help brands get a more defined marketing and content strategy. My guest today, Nick Dimengo, has 12 years of experience in sports, music, and entertainment industries, working for and with companies like Viacom, Maxim, Bleacher Report, and FHM Magazine. He is also currently an editor at BroBible, Green Entrepreneur, and is a mentor at the University of Washington Foster School of Business. Thanks for hopping on this call, Nick.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, let's kick this off right away. So, COVID-19 and really this pandemic has had a huge effect on a lot of people. So, this is kind of a two-parter. Normally, it's just one question, but, how are you currently adjusting to the pandemic? And then my follow-up question is, one of my recent guests recently, who you, I'll let you share who that is and your affiliation as well. Recently had a life, I would say changing situation through this pandemic. So my first question is, how are you doing with it to yourself? And then how are you adjusting with, this person that you're adjusting with it as well?
Yeah. So I appreciate you not letting the cat out of the bag too quickly into the conversation. But to answer your first part of the question on how I'm dealing with the pandemic, it's interesting building a business. My business partner Corey Jones and I have talked about it over the past 8 months. I mean, we came into this pivoting our business strategy from content creation, looking for clients at the end of 2019. We got really great momentum in January and early February about that aspect of the business. We were going out saying, here are brands, we can help you develop that content. We pivoted, got this proprietary data, and thought, that's now another piece of it. But what we can actually do is white label this thing and send it to brands and say, either A, you guys can have the data for yourself, analyze it internally, and create the content, or B, we analyze the data, work with you internally, and then we create the content because we have 25 plus years of doing that. With all that momentum, COVID hits. And now we're sitting there thinking, we're screwed basically. We're thinking we're not closing deals as quickly as we think. Luckily, we have, I don't know if it's a good or bad trait, but we have the trait of patience right now. And we're looking at it as bright side. And we're saying, although we haven't closed deals in the past 8 or 9 months as quickly as we've wanted to or as frequently as we wanted to, and we've got a few clients that we're working with or talking to, the best part of all of this for us is the fact that we're now having the time to continue our outreach. So instead of being bogged down by the actual work, we're actually finding that we're getting more conversations, and that by the end of all this, our hope is that, okay, instead of maybe 10 in the pipeline with the clients and the people we're collaborating with, maybe we have 15 to 20 because we put in the work now. We're not just sitting back waiting for some of these things to go. So as you know, and any good marketer knows, I mean, it's all relationship building. And so for us, that's kind of what we're focusing on right now. So our revenue isn't as high as we have really, we anticipated at the beginning of the year. I mean, we set strong, ambitious goals to hit this year. Unfortunately, you adapt with the times. And then your second part of the question, in terms of the cat out of the bag, you mentioned this person who's close to me. Her name happens to be Christy Zook, who I know is a recent guest of yours, and actually how we got in contact and connected on LinkedIn. And to those who don't know her story, in a nutshell, she lost her job twice in 2020 and got booted from the country back here to Canada. And so she having to be, up here, me being in Seattle, we had to work away from each other for a month. We had just moved into a new house. We're struggling with what everyone else is struggling with. Luckily, both of us are pretty optimistic people, for better or worse. And we thought the light at the end of the tunnel wasn't a train coming at us, but actually something that we were marching towards to get out of this situation. And we're happy, we're healthy, our friends and family are happy and healthy. And so for us, it's just kind of going about it and keep grinding and seeing whenever this thing can end. So I appreciate you asking, but we're doing well. It could obviously be better, but we're looking forward to the day that she can come back to Seattle. We can kind of turn the page on that chapter and move towards the next one.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully sooner than later. She's a great marketer, but great individual as well. So everything, and obviously you know her really well yourself. There's a few things there that I actually want to unpack, but I'm going to wait till a little bit later once we get to the section and really the season of life that you're at right now. But really to start this conversation, which is mainly focused on unpacking your career. You and I were having a conversation how traditionally within the context of an organization, marketers or marketing tends to be a little bit more introverted, less in your face, more behind the scenes, whereas sales is a lot more obviously customer facing. You know, they're I would argue, I'm not going to say everybody is, but I would argue majority of them are extroverted as well. The reason I really want to start this podcast is really to unpack people's careers, to really ask those questions. Okay, why did you make this decision? Why did you go that way? And this first question really has to do with, going back to your undergrad. You majored in English from the University of Kentucky. And looking on your LinkedIn, I saw that after graduating, a year after you graduated, you started a job in marketing and events working at Viacom. So my question is, how and why did you decide to go down the route of marketing?
Yeah. So, the old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I haven't necessarily, you know, read that every single day, but in that circumstance with the CMT job, it was absolutely what happened. And so, I graduated, as you mentioned, from UK with an English degree. And the whole reason why I even switched to English was because, not even kidding, one course, and it was accounting. And the first couple classes I took accounting at UK, I struggled so much with being up all night to study for these exams, and I was like, I'm studying, working my ass off to try and get a B in this class, and I'm just not you know understanding the concept and putting together what I think I need to do to be able to be successful in this. And so I started doing some creative writing classes. I started talking to my counselor, and I said, is there something that I should be doing other than marketing and management? And she said, well, it sounds like you really love writing. And so midway through junior year, that late in my college career, I actually switched to English. And I think it was the best decision for a lot of reasons. I could go down a rabbit hole of what came from that, both short term and long term. But it really gave me an understanding of, okay, for the first 2.5 years of my college career, it was all marketing, it was all management, it was all advertising type of classes. And then for me to switch to English, it was before all copywriting and digital content and the focus on content being king was even an idea. And so for me, I got a really good mix in my college career early on. And then when I moved into CMT, I had always worked events. When I worked at University of Kentucky Athletic Department in media relations, I was kind of dabbling in marketing, media, writing, editing, and obviously events, because I was present at basketball games, football games, soccer games, you name it. And so for CMT, when they came to me, my two buddies who worked there asked me to go on the road with them for the event and mobile marketing job. I thought it's a no-brainer. I get to hang out with my buddies, go on the road, go to things like the New Mexico State Fair and Summerfest up in Milwaukee, a couple events around Chicago, obviously related to country music with CMT. But it was just fun to get out there and, as you said, be extroverted, talk to people, be creative, see what worked, see what didn't, really get people out of their shell of just, I'm at an event, but really giving them an experience. And so that's how I got to do it. And you'll hear me say a lot, I'm all about the story. And that was exactly what I got to do when I was at that job, is tell the story to someone to leave a memorable experience with them.
Yeah, that's honestly something I see across your entire LinkedIn and online. Just like a lot of your intent is behind telling a specific story or a specific narrative. So this is more of a curious question, more on your English degree. So I've met a lot of marketers, I haven't met every single marketer, but marketers that I have met. Specifically copywriters, some of them are really good at persuasive writing, specifically copywriting for like sales letters, stuff like that. But the editing piece or the grammatical piece is always an issue, and I 100% hold myself into that. My wife actually helps me edit a lot of my copy because I'm just not. That's just not a strength for me. So I'm curious. What have you noticed that to be true, or is it not true? And then also too, how has your ability to major in English like helped your like the grammatical side of writing and really communicating a certain point or narrative?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we all have our different strengths. We all, I'm not great at X, Y, Z, and even the things I'm really good at, I'm not an expert or I'm great at. That being said, I do find that my editorial and writing background absolutely helps when it comes to copywriting, comes up with, developing a brief or strategy for content. Because, you know, what I really pride myself on, and Corey does this as well, and this is what we say to, in any meeting where we're talking to potential clients for the statement group, is we have always worked with qualitative data. And so in saying that, we're really good at creating a story and putting that story on paper because it's what we've done forever. And so when we switch it over now to the quantitative data, we're able to now do that even better because we have better insights. And so because of what you mentioned and what I just said about the data and the quantitative side, it's coming up with a ball of clay and understanding how do you put that into a story. And we've just been really good at that, on being able to do it on paper, in video, however you name it, we've been able to kind of do it. And so, yeah, I absolutely, everyone talks about wanting to be a great communicator. And I don't know if I am or not. I think everyone can improve. I know myself, I can a lot. But when it comes to writing, absolutely, it's the grammatical side of things. I don't even think, a lot of people think about doing, messing up when they're writing. For me, I don't have to think about it. I can just flow as if I'm speaking and then go back and say, all right, maybe I need to correct this, change this, or oops, I misspelled a word. So it comes very natural to me, just like someone who, swims every day is going to be a hell of a better swimmer than you or I who do it, twice a year. So I think because it's my everyday kind of role in editing and writing, it absolutely helps me get through on some of the marketing stuff.
Yeah, and I'll segue into the next piece about Maxim. But I heard something on Twitter a while ago. There's this guy who posts a lot of really good content, really good copy, and obviously within Twitter you have only X amount of characters to be able to communicate your point. And the reason, so there was a post he basically said is like, if you're able to write out what you're thinking, it allows for you to process the a lot of the just understanding of what you're writing at a deeper level than just thinking it or than just processing it, because it allows for you to actually tangibly get it on something as opposed to just and your thoughts. So all of that stuff resonates 100%. So you eventually transitioned into Maxim. So you mentioned you had a event and marketing, it's mobile marketing back, at least intro into marketing. Eventually you pivoted into Maxim. Why did you decide to begin the process of actually going down the route of editor? And obviously, and you were talking about the marketing, it was, you got to hang out with your friends, you got to be more extroverted, but how did that whole process happen for you?
Ambition, baby. That's honestly why. I was working at a marketing firm in Chicago, working as an assistant account coordinator, I think. I was 23 years old, fresh out of college, moved to Chicago a year after I graduated, less than a year. And I didn't like it. I found myself going directly to the VP and the directors, and I was forcing myself to learn beneath them instead of going, this was a pretty big company, 250, 300 people in the office. I wasn't going to my direct manager. I was going to these people who, I thought I can learn more under. I want to do more. And when I lost my job there, it's sort of a mutual split. I had about 6 weeks in Chicago and had to make a decision. Do I want to go down this route or this route? And this first route was continuing to live in Chicago, living this marketing life. I mean, it's so big there, and I hadn't had any experience, obviously, on even a local level of editorial stuff besides just some internships. And by pure luck, this job at Maxim was posted back in Nashville at the time, which is where I had moved from anyway, and applied. Went in the day after 4th of July. I remember I was burnt. I looked like a lobster. Had this interview I was late for because I couldn't even find the office. I roll in, I meet who now is my business partner, Corey Jones, who was my boss at Maxim. So 11 years ago, I met him and interviewed him, and it didn't even feel like an interview. It was just like two guys hanging out. It's like I had already known him. He was asking me more about the weekend and what I was interested in, and obviously a few things about writing. Put me under a writing test, and they gave me the job. And that's kind of why I pivoted into it, is because I knew that, similar to what I said about my college experience, I can write for 15 hours a day. I love it. I love telling stories. I love entertaining people. And I thought that at the marketing job at the time, going into an office every day and not really having the impact that I wanted, I didn't enjoy. And so I had to make a decision at 23, 24 years old, what's going to make me happiest. And I was just fortunate enough that Maxim worked out.
Yeah, that's self-awareness to the max, and then also to really understanding like, hey, what do you want to do? And because you had already been going down this route, so naturally people end up just kind of staying where they're going, but you obviously took it on yourself to really be self-aware and ask yourself that. So I'm glad that piece worked. And so one of the things I noticed in your career is, you've been an editor for several different, organizations and companies. And so there was an eventual switch from being an actual editor. And I'm not saying you were an editor during this season, because you were, but you went into more of a digital marketing specialist type role, senior content strategist, which I'm sure probably falls under some way associated with editorial content, and then social media manager, all the while being a featured columnist for the Bleacher Report. So my question here is, when I'm looking at, especially looking at different editors, like, backgrounds, that they kind of like mesh and kind of blend together throughout their career. And so really to kind of unpack that piece is, did you have a goal in mind on why you were trying different marketing roles, or were these just opportunities that were presented to you along the career path that you were going?
I think a little bit of both. Little behind the scenes secret for everyone watching and listening, you send the questions beforehand. And that was a question that I looked at and I thought, how do I answer this one? Because it really was a little bit of both. Some of it's necessity. Some of it was pure luck. Some of it was, dude, I need a job and I'm going to go with this one. And for me, the end goal has always been to work for myself. And I've made that very, very clear throughout my career. Even the story I had told you before about, where I was working in Chicago. Like, the reason I wanted to learn so quickly is because I've had goals in mind that by this age, by this time in my life, this is what I want to be doing. And that still continues, obviously, today. And I think it's important for all of us to do that. And so for these jobs, I knew that where I wanted to be was not going to be attainable by just being an editor. It wasn't going to be attainable by, just writing. I needed more. And I still need more. There's still things that I look at. I'm like, man, I don't know that. And so for me, I always take pride. We mentioned Christy earlier. I always take pride when I tell her, I say, I love that some of my best friends are like, dude, we don't even know what the hell you do. Like, how do you make money? Like, how? I'm like, I do everything. I try to do everything. And it's because I don't want to be, cast as a journalist, as an editor, as an entrepreneur, as a strategist. I'm like, I want to literally be doing everything that I'm interested in. And I'm going to fail a hell of a lot more than I succeed. But even if I succeed at 10 or 15%, feel like I'm doing pretty well, so that it comes back, a year from now, 6 months from now, where that failure I learned from, that will then turn into a success. So for me, I've always been, again, ambitious, hungry to learn, and eager to try and get to work for myself. And I know I really have to be a jack of all trades and kind of a Swiss Army knife in order to do that and extend beyond just writing.
Yeah, for sure. And it, I like the point that you're making, and I'll give an illustration on who I thought of right away when you were mentioning this whole process. But it's like the whole I had a previous podcast host mentioning, like, I don't want what I do to necessarily dictate what type of or who I am. It's who I am, and I have all these functions that I do because that's a part. And the person that came to mind, a great example that everybody knows, is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is a podcaster. Joe Rogan is a comedian. Joe Rogan is an MMA. Obviously he used to be on media, on Fear Factor, different. He's done so many things, but at the end of the day, this is Joe Rogan. So in the same way, the way you're describing is like, hey, although maybe it's a unconventional route of, graduating marketing, going into some corporate marketing, career, and then working your way up, which isn't bad. Like I know a lot of people do that route. And if that's your goal, by all means do it. But there's other people, which in your case, obviously this is why it's helpful to unpack this. Your career is really understanding, okay, like, there's so many things that you want to do within your life. Why just try one if you have so many interests and so many other things? So I think that really, this actually segues phenomenally into the next question, which is really about your last experience working in-house as I can't remember what the actual editorial director for a media company, specifically working with FHM.com. And you and I had, initially linked up a little bit, prior to this recording. And so, one of the things I noticed that you were talking about was, how your work-life balance and different things like that, or lack thereof, looked like. And then also too, some of the realizations, experiences that you went through that ultimately pivoted you into what now is, the more recent part of your career. So would you mind explaining, what life was like during that last specific job, in-house job, and then what realizations and experience you went through in order for you to eventually pivot?
Yeah. I mean, when I was at FHM, to give you some context, I was hired to rebrand the entire magazine. And so for those unfamiliar with FHM, it stands for Him Magazine. And it was, for a long time, one of the top male lifestyle magazines in the world. They competed with the Esquires, GQ, Maxims of the world. It was a little bit sophomoric and tongue-in-cheek in its humor, so it kind of hovered around more of the Maxim sense in terms of the audience. And they were trying to rebrand and say, we need to pivot our content strategy. And they were getting rid of the print and going only digital. And this was in 2016. And so they found me. I was lucky enough. I remember it so vividly. I was working on a Saturday. We linked up. Someone pushed me. I'll drop all three of their names because I need to thank them at some point today for the experience. But she reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, would you be interested in this? Responded right away. I had a little bit of qualm, and I was like, I don't know if this is legit. I was like, wait, FHM? This has been a magazine for 30 years. Like, why do they want me? It was weird. As confident as I am, it was a very weird realization that this would be it. Fast forward, I mean, after I took the job, 7 or 8 months, the joke within the walls at Bauer, which is the media company that used to own FHM, was that it was nickdimengo.com. And, you mentioned the work-life balance or lack thereof. I was writing 14 or 15 articles a day. I was doing all the outreach. So I was trying to get celebrities, entertainers, athletes, fitness experts, you name it, to try and collaborate with us to do features on them. We were obviously, my ambition was, let's take this to a media company and make it an actual digital publisher. And at that point, 2016, 2017, we need podcasts. And it can't just be me. It needs to be people who already have been successful creating content, people who already have a following. We need video, all these things. So it was long days. And you know what? I've told you this before, and I'll say it again. Wouldn't change a damn thing about it, man. I was working 80, 90 hours a week. I wish I was lying. I know some people work probably just as much, if not more, but you always have to be on. There's breaking news that always can be written about, and you have to understand how to turn it off. And I was really bad, really, really bad. I just cared way too much. But that said, the three people who I mentioned earlier, I need to give major props and thanks to: Allison Mezzafonte, Christian Basler, and Kate Spies. I learned under the absolute best. They gave me the opportunity. They gave me the freedom. I remember talking to Kate, who's, that she was the VP of editorial and social at of all the brands under the Bauer umbrella. I remember talking to her, freaked out, being like, Kate, you don't really like talk to me in our one-on-ones about work. Like it's like life and stuff. And she had said, she called me Nico, and she's like, Nico, I don't worry about you. You know your brand. You do you know your audience. I'm going to let you be. And being able to hear that from boss and given that freedom, it was more of we were peers. It wasn't, I looked at her as if, I'm doing something right or I'm doing something wrong. And same thing with Christian and Allison. They always supported me and said, go for it. Trial and error on all of this stuff as we rebrand. And so, it changed me for the absolute best. It gave me an understanding of what I really, really want, an understanding of what I don't want, and an understanding of, all right, you lived that. It was great, but let's do it a little bit better and work a little bit smarter next time, not as hard. When you do what I'm doing now, which is starting a company in a pandemic and still editing and writing for really high-end brands that, deserve attention and need top level and A+ production. So it just taught me a hell of a lot, and I'm really appreciative to have gone through it, which a lot of people may not have thought, working that long and that hard on something.
Yeah, and I saw. So I'm connected with one of my previous guests on LinkedIn, and I actually saw you recently comment on one of his posts. And I actually read it. You were talking something about he had posted about like working 80 hours a week isn't productive, and you ended up posting something or replying something along the lines of like smart work versus hard work. But the reason I'm pointing that out, and here's a piece, is like you actually went through the hard work, and through that process, through going through kind of the gauntlet of creating content at scale and doing all these different aspects, wearing so many hats, you learned how to be more effective with your time. You learn how to be smarter with, like you said, you had the realization, okay, like this is not sustainable, but there are some tweaks, there are some changes that you can make. And so the reason I want to point that out is I think sometimes people use the smart work as a cop out of hard work. Like initially you get to start working hard if you don't know specifically what to do or how to, build something from the ground up. But then over time you start learning those hacks. You start learning like what actually matters. What's the 20% of time, resources, energy that produces 80% of the results. And so what you're saying is, I really wanted to kind of point that little piece out specifically to the audience here. So eventually after FHM, and you said it was a great experience, but there was a lot of realizations too on your shelf. You and I think it was 3 other co-founders eventually started New Money. And so my question is, what inspired this venture right out of, pivoting out of FHM Magazine and to starting New Money?
Yeah, so it was 2 executives at Bauer who came to me, surprisingly came to me, and asked if I wanted to do New Money. And it was a millennial money site, essentially. We know that how many kids are in debt from, college or credit card or whatever. And we thought we need to educate people, our age, how to spend money, save money. And I saw an opportunity. I knew that from FHM, that was something that always performed well. I knew from days prior, at BroBible, when I was there before taking the FHM job, that type of content resonates because you're always going to have a new 19 or 20-year-old making stupid money mistakes. We've all been there. And so we really honed in, focused on, certain keywords and optimization on obviously these pages, got people who knew how to write for SEO and to show up in search, because we didn't have a lot of money to promote it and bump it up in ads and stuff. And so they just came to me and said, dude, do you want to be the chief content officer here and run this thing and help us build it? I said, why not? Like, I have nothing else going on. I just lost my job at FHM, and I'm the type of person who would much rather risk than play it safe. And so we did that, and it was great for 6 months, unfortunately, which happens, for all you entrepreneurs out there, as you can definitely probably relate to. They had to go their separate ways. They both lived in New York, had families, and said, we really need to be making more money than we are. And so I said, sucks to hear, but absolutely support you and understand. And I think the 6 months that we did what we did, we saw success. It just wasn't as immediate as we thought. And, you learn from it. So it was a great opportunity for me to just continue to extend something I was interested in and passionate about at the time, more so than I am probably now, in terms of the content and the overall strategy of what New Money was and the concept. And yeah, just learn from, again, that opportunity and say, what can I do now differently than I did 2 years ago when we first did that?
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, how did you process that piece? The other co-founders saying, hey, we're looking at stopping this. Obviously, like you had mentioned, just in business in general, if you're an entrepreneur, some things work, some things don't for whatever reason. But how did you process that, and ultimately segue obviously into now, being a partner at the Statement Group? But what was that initial process during the actual breakup of the that piece?
Oh, I was pissed. I cut him out of my. No, I'm just kidding. I accepted it. Again, everyone's got their own story, their own reasons, their own factors for things, and these are two guys who, again, high level executives. They were probably making good money and at their full time jobs, and when they weren't at their prior position at Bauer Media, thought we need a certain level of income. And so for me, it was a lot of stuff. I mean, whether it was the money factor, whether it was us collaborating, we just didn't do a good job of communicating as frequently as we needed to, I think. And you're hustling in one side to make money to keep the lights on and pay the bills. Then on the other side, you're also trying to build a company. And not that those guys weren't cut out for it. They've done it before. They'll do it again, I'm sure. But in our trio, it just wasn't a good fit at that time, and it's unfortunate. But it is what it is.
Yeah. So eventually you swapped over into becoming a partner with the Statement Group with your buddy Corey. You had mentioned, which you initially met at Maxim in Nashville. How did that opportunity come about? How did that reconnection there happen, and ultimately obviously become the Statement Group?
Yeah. I love telling the story. He'll probably laugh when he hears this. It's a true love story between Corey and me, I think. And he was my boss at Maxim, and I looked at him very similarly to the executives and directors at that marketing agency I mentioned to you that I worked at in Chicago. I looked at him as a mentor, and I knew he had been successful. After Maxim, he went on and literally revamped Playboy. He oversaw the site and then was put over the magazine. He's got a great story, which he always jokes is better told over a few cocktails, where he had to pitch Hugh Hefner at the Playboy Mansion what a non-nude Playboy would look like, which, he says on his career tombstone, that will be, on his career tombstone, is he was the guy responsible for that. And so I knew that he's got experience, he knows what he's doing. And after seeing success for myself at FHM and other spots, I thought I just need to reach out to him. I had just launched something new on my own, and I wanted to get his input to make sure I knew what I was doing, and not just drawing eyeballs. I can drive eyeballs to a website and grow a brand, but how do you convert that to money? Because I don't care if I have 4 million people a day looking at a website. If that's not converting to income, you're just not doing your job. And so just wanted to ask him, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? He calls me Nicky D, and he says, Nicky D, you just don't have 5 of you, man. You're doing everything you can. It's just you don't have the support to scale this thing. Conversations led to, down the road with, months down the road, we ended up saying, all right, let's pivot into sort of a agency style group, essentially. And he had always had the Statement Group as a consulting business for himself on the side. I kind of dropped creating original content for the venture I had started, And we formed together with the Statement Group, and now we're doing what I mentioned before, which is, creating content for brands, talking to brands more so about how we can create content or develop content and strategy around marketing, sales, editorial, all of that using our proprietary data. So it's different for us. I mean, we're putting on our sales and marketing hats now, which is very much out of our realm, but it is so fun to do, man. I mean, it's something that I've always wanted to try, and it's just, we get amped about like a meeting with a CMO or CEO of a company. And I know that most people are like, dude, we do that every single day. I'm like, we're editorial guys. Like, this is awesome, man. We like are stoked about it. And some of the people we're talking to about this is they're big brands, and it's, humbling that we either have contacts or just smart enough to be charming enough to get, a phone call and follow up with these brands and these people who have been so successful. So that's kind of how it came. We thought we need to pivot in a time of, all this content overload. How do we be smarter and not just say, hey, here's why we think you should do something, and really say, here's why we think you should do something, because literally the data, it's showing what your audience over indexes for. And you'd be stupid to go against that. And that's, the rest right now is kind of history, and excited to see where we continue to grow, after all of this stuff. Well, not even after, just during and after all this pandemic stuff, clears up.
Yeah, that's super encouraging, and it's the grind, the whole process right now of really building this is it's you and I were talking about, like, it's fun, it's scary, it's confusing, it's unclear, it's all these things, especially given the pandemic. But there's no other way you would want to have it. Like, there's no other way.
You can choose comfort, or you could choose adventure. You and I have chosen adventure, and I think it's fun to do that route.
Yeah. So you're a partner now for this company. You've been an editor, senior editor, editorial director, editor in chief. What makes a good editor?
Listening, patience, understanding people, I think, is more than anything an important part of the editorial process. It's not understanding words, it's not understanding grammar. It's allowing your writers to be themselves, have them have a voice, have them have personalities, and really reward concepts. I mean, when you talk to writers and you ask them, what do you want to write about today? If they have 5 good ideas, say, okay, all 5 are great, but how do we make them better? How do we continue to get you excited to write about this? I think, as a writer, editor, whatever, someone who develops content, you always want to push yourself. You always want to, test yourself. We're always continuing to grow. And so as an editor, it's understanding what's going to get someone into the page. And that's a strong headline and a strong deck, without revealing too much and without being clickbaity. Screw clickbait. Like, get that out of here. You then have to support that with the actual content. It has to be well written. It has to be, something that for me, who's often writing about mainly sports stuff and entertainment content, it has to be something that sparks. It hits a nerve. It causes a reaction. It causes a debate. I saw a guy yesterday who I wrote an article on our Facebook page, was like, Nick Dimengo is so brave, highly sarcastic. And I'm like, I love that. Call me out, like, make fun of me. Tell me if it's not well written. I've said this for 10 years, like, I want honest feedback as a writer, and I want honest feedback as an editor. And if what we're producing or what I'm producing isn't up to snuff, let us know, dude, because you're going to learn from it. And if you love it, I feel like something's wrong if everyone says this is great. I don't want to hear that. Tell me, be honest with me. Tell me it sucks, and we'll be better. So it's honestly listening, adapting, and just allowing your writers and the people you work with to really thrive off being themselves. Because in a creative industry like we're in, marketing, editorial, content creation, all of that, that's what's going to make you successful, are doing things that are so different and allowing people to run with those ideas. As long as they're thought out and they're strategized the right way, the execution, put it together on paper, then go do a badass job on the execution side, you're going to be successful.
Yeah, that's a lot of great wisdom and insight from, your 12 years of experience, specifically in editorial marketing. So if you had a chance today to sit down with Nick Dimengo, fresh out of UK, fresh, just graduated with his English degree, what advice would you tell him specifically based off of everything similar to what you just shared and everything that you know now?
Initially, I thought trust the process, but it's too cliche. I honestly wanted to kind of revamp it to trust your damn self. And I think it's, you know, understanding that, and I say this a lot to Chrissy with what she's going through. Yesterday, great day. You did podcasts, you had an interview with the CMO, you had 2 phone calls with, sports franchises, and email communication to set up phone calls with this pitch for the data product. Nothing today should matter. Nothing today should be worse than what yesterday was. And we all need to practice patience. But for me, I absolutely need to be like, look, man, this is not going to happen overnight. You're not going to get to 0 to 1,000 in 24 hours because you sent 50 email pitches last night. And I think for me, it's trust the damn process, trust your damn self, to understand that you know what you're doing the best you can, and not making it personal if you don't hear back or you get a no. And it's, as someone super competitive, I had done that in the past, and I'm starting over the past few years getting out of that. Like, it's not you, it's you need to work on maybe your pitch or your communication and learn from that. But that's absolutely what I would have told myself 15 years ago. It's, man, like just stick with what you know, continue to adapt and learn. You'll be fine.
That's great. I like that a lot. Super relevant, especially now during these times, pandemic uncertainty and stuff like that. So I'm going to transition now into the last part of this interview, which is a rapid fire questions. There's a lot of other questions I wish I could have got to, but just for sake of time, we're going to transition into the last piece. And so my first question to you right now, specifically when it relates to software tools, and I know you're an editorial, what is your favorite marketing tool or software that you're currently using within your, work?
Yeah, for me, it's more so Trello. We used it a lot at FHM, and it's just, I hate being unorganized, and I think it gives us all visibility into what you're working on. And it's not as a micromanaging tool, it's a tool of, hey, we're going to write something, we want feedback before we post it. Here are some tasks that you guys have to, knock out on your list, and here, top priority and all that. So that for me is probably the one that's been the most helpful, especially as someone who works in content where you need quick turnarounds. I mean, we have deadlines. If something needs to be written and published in 15 minutes, how do we get a hold of each other? Boom, you get a notification, you look at it, everyone gets eyeballs. You know that's top priority and of most importance. Like, let's do it. So that would be it for me.
Awesome. So my next question is, what is a favorite online marketing course or maybe even editorial, some sort of like class that you've taken online that has been beneficial for you?
I'm going to be as completely transparent as possible. I don't really do a whole lot of online classes. For me, I should, but I'm so focused, head down, sprinting on what we're working on, that I don't really have an opportunity to step away and look at something, read something, take something. And again, I can't wait to have the opportunity to do it. But right now, being consumed by media all the time and working in it, for me, I find, let's just get out for a run, let's get out for a walk, let's cook, do some other hobbies. So I will give you an update on that once I have more time and interest. So let's call that to be determined for right now.
For sure, and no need to feel bad. I've had probably 5 or so guests say the same thing. One of them replied saying, "Life, I learned by doing. I learned by actually being in the trenches." So that's a great way to learn. I just figured like I've actually been debating maybe potentially changing this question because the goal here is like, what are other resources marketers can look at, potentially leveraging. So and the reason I'm saying this is so I can actually, when I edit this whole process, I can make a note of finding a more creative way of actually maybe getting some sort of resource, tip or trick specifically. So the last two questions. So the second and last one is, what is your favorite marketing or business book that you've read up to this point?
4 Hour Work Week. I mean, I know it's so stupid. It's so old and everyone's read it, but that really left a impact on me to say this is how you can live your life. You do not have to do what's quote unquote normal. And I've never been quote unquote normal. And so for me, it left an impact on not necessarily the same process of hiring these people and outsourcing this, but the idea of, you can have this life. What you've grown up seeing or hearing of a 9 to 6 job, going to an office, getting all dolled up, not necessarily what you want, and it's not necessarily what everyone wants. And so reading that book meant a lot to be like, it's okay to feel like you're weird to think this way, and it's okay to actually do it. And so that would be the book for me.
It's a great book. Yeah, I love Tim Ferriss. So my last question, which normally is one specific type of. So my question is, who is your favorite marketer? But for you specifically, I'm going to open it up to editorial writer or just writer in general. Who's your favorite marketer or editor that you either have worked with closely or have admired from afar?
So there's kind of two. The first one would be, I just like his LinkedIn content, and it's Shane Snow, the chief, I think, creative officer or content officer at Contently. He does great stuff on LinkedIn. Anyone like myself who is either a veteran entrepreneur who's kind of bounced around, a new entrepreneur, or someone who's thinking about starting their own business, he has great insight and just someone who inspires you to try and push yourself and go down the right path. The other one would be Bill Simmons as an editorial guy. I mean, he's kind of the dream scenario. Started writing in his basement, got a job at a local Boston, I think, website, launched a website. ESPN came calling, and now he's done what he's done. Working with Connor Shell and those guys at ESPN initially on the 30 for 30 series. And for someone who has always said writing will always be there, he went from writing and the grind of that into all of these other creative fields of sponsorships, partnerships, video, production, directing, writing, all of that stuff kind of mixed. And so for me, the way that he's been able to market himself and give himself a voice to kind of these sports nuts, that's a guy who I've always looked up to. I mean, it's different now, but I think he's always been a guy that for the past 20 plus years, everyone in my space has been like, that's the OG right there, man.
Yeah, and I'm not super into the editorial space, but I'm familiar with the name Bill Simmons. So you can like if you hear that, you'll at least okay, this is someone like that at least have that at least is an OG or within some sort of writing capacity. So if people are interested in learning more about what you do, the type of content you're writing, or even more about the company that you're building right now with Corey, where can they connect with you and where can they find some of these other resources?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the easiest would be through LinkedIn. I mean, I'll throw out my phone number and email, man, if people want it. Give me a text, 330-554-1726. And Dimengo@gmail. I mean, I'm all about just creating conversations and relationships. And so if there's an opportunity out there for anyone listening who, is looking to try and take their business to another level, and is looking for content and smarter marketing campaigns, Corey and I can deliver that through our data. And so hopefully from this and our conversations, there's someone or multiple people who are interested in chatting. So yeah, that's where they can find me.
Awesome. Well, great. Thanks again, Nick, for coming on the podcast and sharing your knowledge, experience, resources with me and the marketing community.
Absolutely, Jonathan. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for having me on and taking the time this morning to chat. So looking forward to continuing our relationship moving forward, connecting, kind of, parlaying all of our collaboration together to see what happens down the road. So thanks so much.